Hi guys, welcome back to Mentor and yet another video podcast. It's great to see you all back as usual. I hope you're all doing great. So today's podcast is going to be a bit shorter because honestly I am working on slightly better podcasts. I am buying equipment now to improve the channel quality, and so I don't really want to waste any of my good subjects this early on. But today I want to talk a little bit about lasers, people pointing laser pointers at aircraft during final approach, and I'm also going to give you the answer to last week's question. So stay tuned to the end, and remember, if you're seeing this for the first time and you like what you're seeing, make sure that you press the subscribe button above and tell all your friends about it, because I am trying to grow the channel at the best of my capability, and the more people we have watching it and the more people we have asking questions, the better these podcasts will become. So stay tuned to the end and make sure that you do ask your questions afterwards, okay? Welcome back, guys. So today I want to talk about something that's a little bit serious, okay? So last night I was coming in to land at my home base here in Girona, Spain, and at about 1300 feet descending while me and my co-pilot was configuring the aircraft, the final part of the configuration. We were selecting gear down, selecting flaps 15 and continuing with our landing checklist. Some idiots decided that it would be a great idea to shine laser into the cockpit, and he or she did this repeatedly during maybe 10 or 15 seconds during our final approach. So it is illegal to use laser pointers towards aircraft. I just want to start off by saying that it's illegal in most countries, not all countries, but most countries, and all of the countries are looking at legislation on top of this. Now, what can happen if you shine a laser towards an aircraft at any stage of flight? Well, there are a couple of things that can happen. First of all, when it comes to the effect on the pilots, the effect of the pilots is different depending on if it hits us straight in the eyes or if it just illuminates the window shortly, okay? But it moves from something called flash blindness, which is when we get a laser into our eyes and we just lose visibility completely. We can also get what's called an after image, which is what you get, when you're sitting in a dark room and you suddenly look into a bright light source, those kind of images of that light source that kind of follow your vision around as you're looking. We can get that, and that can be serious. It can actually permanently damage our eyes. And also we have the effect of just the glare on the windshield that removes what we're actually looking at, which is during the landing phase, the runway or the approach lights in front of us. And we just see this green kind of lasery blur on the window. All right, so those are the things that can happen to us. What can happen to the people that are pointing the lasers? Well, this is where it starts getting interesting all over the world now. This is seen as an offense against aircraft safety. Okay, it's not seen as a prank or a minor offense. It's seen like a bigger offense, like if you were trying to sabotage the safety of a flight, which means that if you do this in Australia and you get caught, you can get up to 20 years of prison time. If you do this in UK, I think the UK scale is a little bit easier on it. It's 5 years in prison plus an exorbitant fine. Okay. Yesterday what I did was, once we got out of the laser attack, I immediately called ATC, told them that we've had laser attack, and I indicated to them which area the laser came from, because we can see it very clearly. And they called the police, and the police was dispatched, just sitting there waiting for the next person, the next aircraft to come to see if this person was still there pointing the lasers. And the Guardia de Civil told me that if they do find this person, and they will eventually, they face up to 75,000 euros in fines. Okay, so this is what happens. Now, what I would like all of you to do is, first of all, of course, never even think of shining a laser towards an aircraft. But also, if you hear of someone who has done it or think it's a good idea, then please tell them that it's not a good idea and that can really ruin their life if they do. And also, if you heard that someone is doing it, you see someone is doing it, call the police. call the police immediately, because it does form a threat against aviation security. Okay, if this happens during the later stage of the approach, like it did yesterday, and you get it straight into your eyes, you can be blinding the pilot. We might have to shift controls in the cockpits, or we just have to go around, but we can't, or one of us might not be able to see properly. So it is a real threat to aviation safety, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. So please tell people not to do it, and if you see people doing it or hear about people doing it, call the police. Okay, it's a serious offense. Right. Go. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the question that I posed. Now, I realized that the question that I posed was not fantastically put. I asked if it would be easier or harder to land a light aircraft or a heavy aircraft. Now, that can be construed or understood differently, and it was. What I actually meant with the question was, is it easier to land a light Boeing 737 or a heavy Boeing 737? So the same aircraft type, but at different weights. Okay. I have received, like I expected, loads of different answers to this. Okay. First of all, I want to start off by saying that people who said that it's harder to land a light aircraft because it's more susceptible to crosswinds and turbulence and so on, you are right. It is more susceptible to crosswinds and winds in general when it's light, but that was not what I was actually looking for, but you're absolutely correct in saying so. What I was thinking about, and the reason I posed this question, was that when people think about things that are flying, when it comes to how heavy they are, they tend to think about how easy it is to get something flying. Okay, and they think it must be harder to get a heavy aircraft flying than a light aircraft flying because it weighs more. Makes sense. So if you turn that reasoning around, it should be easier to get a heavy aircraft down than a light aircraft, because that would make sense. But that is not actually the case, and this is why I wanted to bring this question up. When we talk about energy management in flying the bigger airlines, and in my case the 737, we talk about energy as in three sources of energy. You have potential energy, which is the aircraft's altitude. You have kinetic energy, which is the aircraft's speed. And you also have the energy which is stored in your wing tanks, which is your chemic energy, your fuel. Okay. And these energy states you can play around with. Okay, you can either change your potential energy to kinetic energy by increasing the speed by dropping. Okay, so in that case you will be descending quicker and quicker, which means that your potential energy is disappearing, but your kinetic energy is increasing. All right. If you think about the potential energy, and if you stop thinking about an aircraft and picture a train sitting on top of a hill, okay, and that train is going down the hill, would it be easier to stop a heavy train or a light train going down that hill? Kind of speaks for itself. The heavy train would be harder to stop, and it's exactly the same thing with an aircraft. So if you're flying an aircraft which is closing in on its maximum landing weight, which is in the 737 case around 65 tons, it is going to be more complicated to decelerate that aircraft and to descend that aircraft because it has more potential energy. And when you're changing that towards kinetic energy, it's going to be harder to decelerate as well. So that's really what I was after, which is something that some of our cadets are really struggling with when they come out into line training, because when I fly this aircraft, I really think in those terms. I think about potential energy, kinetic energy, and how I can change in between them. So for example, if I'm being kept high by ATC, so I have an approach path which is going from A to B, but ATC doesn't let me descend, so I'm going and I'm becoming higher and higher on my path. Then I have to do something about my energy state, and what I tend to do is, if I'm being kept high, my path is here but the aircraft is flying over it and it's becoming higher and higher on the path, then I start reducing my speed. So I am keeping my potential energy, but by reducing my speed, speeding it back towards the up bump, towards the minimum fly speed, I am reducing my kinetic energy. So when I get my descent clearance, I can press level change, for example, and I can increase my speed thus increasing the kinetic energy and decreasing my potential energy and getting myself back onto the path. That's how I'm thinking, okay? So when it comes to descent planning, it's all about being aware of your aircraft's energy level. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, then please ask me to explain further. We have some rules of thumb to keep in mind, and what we tend to use is, in order to know how much track miles you need in order to descend and decelerate an aircraft down for landing, is you take 3 times your altitude in track miles. So if you're at 20,000 feet, you're going to need 60 miles. But you also need track miles to decelerate the aircraft. And what we tend to do then is we count from our speed down to about 200 knots, which is where you will start to configure the aircraft. So let's say that you're at 20,000 feet and you're flying an indicated airspeed of 260 knots. Then you need 20 times 3, which is 60 miles. But you also need 6 nautical miles to decelerate from 260 to 200 knots. So 1 nautical mile per each 10 knots to decelerate. So in my example with 260 knots at 20,000 feet, you'll need about 66 nautical miles in order to descend and decelerate the aircraft down to landing. So that's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind when if you're doing this in your flight simulator, for example, you'll see it works out perfectly. But you will also see that depending on your weight, it's going to be slightly different. If you have a heavy aircraft, you're going to need more track miles, and if you have a lighter aircraft, you're going to need less. And that is because of these energy states. So that's why knowing physics and mathematics is also good in this profession, okay? Because physics will explain all of this to you. It's not very complicated physics, it's actually fairly simple physics, but we still need to know about them. So that's why I'm going to ask more questions like this, and I love the fact that you're interacting. I've gotten some excellent responses from some of you guys that is actually saying exactly what I'm saying now. Keep posting questions to me and keep giving me explanations like that, because it really motivates me, and it also tells me pretty much what level you guys are at and what you need explaining, okay? Now, the next thing I want you to do is I'm going to do another live feed, right? But the last couple of live feeds I've done, the chat function hasn't worked, and I'm in contact with Google trying to fix this. But I also realized that I need to be a little bit better prepared for your questions before the live feed even start. So I want you to this video, I want you to send in the questions you want me to answer during my next live feed. Okay, that way I can select some of those questions and I can start the live feed by explaining those questions or answering those questions. And then we can do what we've done on the last couple of live feeds, which is you continuously sending in new questions. So when I'm running out of things to talk about, then I will be taking live questions, or if I feel that something is well connected to the question I'm talking about, then I can continue to talk about that depending on what you're sending in. So send in questions that you want me to cover on the live feed now, as in the comment section to this video. I will write them down and I will answer them in the next live feed. And I think it's going to be probably on Friday night, because I'm getting my new iMac on Friday. So I want to test that out, okay? So it should be much better video quality as well. For now, remember to subscribe and remember to send in all your questions, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. I am going to get myself ready to fly to Poznan. So for now, over and out, and I'll see you next time. Hello again, guys, once again back. I just wanted to let you know I've just done my flight today, and when I came to the crew room this afternoon, they advised me that the police had apprehended the guys that was shooting laser at the aircraft at me yesterday and at the aircraft that was following us. So the system does work, and those people are now facing some serious problems. So I just wanted you guys to know that, and makes me really happy to see that the system does work, and that the fact that we can actually very accurately pinpoint the position of these guys with the laser pointers does help the police to find them. So I hope to see you all in the live feed that I am planning on for, well, it's actually 1 o'clock in the morning now, so tonight. And remember to send in those questions for me so that I can do the live feed as good as possible for you guys. So over and out, I'll see you next time.